The grid drops. You flip the breaker. Nothing. You walk to the garage. Either the generator is dead or out of fuel, or you never owned one in the first place. That moment is where most households lose the next 72 hours. Not because the cold gets them, not because they run out of food, because they spend the first 6 hours doing the wrong things and burn through the resources that would have carried them through the event. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the protocol for surviving the first 72 hours of a grid down event with no generator. No tactical fantasy, no $20,000 solar build, just the engineering of what your body, your food, your medication, and your information need in the order they need it. The first thing to accept is that 72 hours is the threshold. Not because life ends at hour 73, because the data on real blackouts, from Storm Uri in 2021 to the Northeast outage in 2003 to Hurricane Helene last year in western North Carolina, shows that the first 3 days are when households make the irreversible mistakes. Food spoils, medications fail, people drive when they should stay, people stay when they should drive. After hour 72, the situation either stabilizes because power returns, because mutual aid arrives, because the household has adapted, or it becomes a different kind of emergency entirely. The first 72 hours is what you control. Before we get into the protocol, I want to give you something that goes deeper than this video can. The complete protocol broken down hour by hour, with the thermal calculations, the medication storage tables, the comms tree, and the load priority matrix, is in the documentation in the description. Same document referenced throughout this video. 7 days money-back guarantee. Now back to the protocol. Let us start with why the generator question is the wrong question. A standard portable generator at 5,000 watts burns roughly half a gallon of gasoline per hour at half load. 3 days at half load is around 36 gallons of fuel. Most households store between 0 and 10 gallons. Gas stations within a 50-mile radius lose power in the same event. So even the people who own a generator usually run out of fuel between hour 20 and hour 30. The other problem is more subtle. A generator answers the wrong question. It tries to keep your house running at near normal load. But during a 72-hour grid event, you do not need normal load. You need critical load. The freezer with your meat, the medical fridge with insulin or epinephrine. A handful of LED lights, a way to charge phones and run a radio. Critical load is between 2 and 400 watts on average. That is a fraction of what a generator is designed for, and it is well within what passive systems can deliver for 3 days. The household that survives the 72-hour window comfortably is not the household with the biggest generator. It is the household that knows the difference between essential and convenient, and has the chemistry and the procedure to support essential indefinitely. That brings us to the story I want to tell you before we go into the protocol itself. Let me tell you a quick story. James is 51, lives in Houston, Texas, mechanical engineer, 24 years in oil and gas. He's married, 3 kids. His mother-in-law moved in 2 years ago. She has type 1 diabetes. Her insulin needs to stay cold. In February 2021, Storm Uri shut down the Texas grid. 3 days, no power. The temperature in his house dropped into the 40s. His mother-in-law's insulin was stored in a cooler with what was left of the freezer ice. By day 2, the ice was melting. By the morning of day 3, James was driving to a gas station 40 miles away that had power just to keep his mother-in-law's medication viable. That was the moment, not the cold, not the dark. The 40-mile drive to keep insulin alive. A friend at the office, also an engineer, sent him the documentation about a year later. James read the section on nickel-iron chemistry first. He had heard of Edison batteries in college, but had never looked at them seriously. The documentation laid out the case. Patent from 1901. Cells that have been operating for over a century. Resistance to freezing. Resistance to overdischarge. The chemistry that, on paper, never dies. He spent 6 months building a small backup bank. Off-grid, sized for critical loads only, the freezer for insulin, a small medical fridge, some LED lights, nothing fancy. Last year, a transformer blew on his street. Power was out for 19 hours. James did not drive to a gas station. His mother-in-law did not ask him about her insulin. The complete documentation costs less than what a single emergency generator service call would cost during a Texas freeze. 7 days money-back guarantee. Link in the description. When the grid fails, knowledge does not. Back to the protocol. Now I'm going to walk you through the 72 hours, broken into 3 windows. Hour 0 to 12, hour 12 to 36, hour 36 to 72. Each window has a different priority and a different failure mode. Before I get into the windows, one more thing. Every detail I'm about to give you is in the documentation, with the calculations, the thermal tables, and the procurement list. If you click the link in the description now, you have everything I'm about to explain in writing, plus the load matrix and the chemistry comparison. 7 days money-back guarantee, one-time access, permanent. Now back to the protocol. Hour 0 to 12, the triage window. This is the most dangerous window because nothing feels dangerous yet. The fridge is still cold, the lights are out but the sun is up, the phone still has battery. People underestimate the situation and burn resources on comfort instead of capacity. The first thing you do is not light a candle. The first thing you do is not check the news. The first thing you do is open one notebook and write 3 numbers: the temperature inside your house, the temperature outside, and the state of charge of every battery in the building, from the phones to the laptop to the cordless tool packs. Those 3 numbers are the baseline for every decision you make for the next 72 hours. If you skip this step, you are guessing for 3 days. Second, you close the refrigerator and the freezer, and you do not open them again for at least 4 hours. A full freezer holds safe temperature for 48 hours if it is not opened. A half-full freezer holds it for 24. Every door opening costs you about 90 minutes of safe storage. Most household food loss and blackouts happens because people open the freezer to check. Third, you put on the clothing you would wear outside and the temperature your house will reach by hour 12. Not the clothing you are wearing now, the clothing you will need. If you wait until you are cold to put on layers, you are already losing core temperature, and warming a cold body costs more energy than keeping a warm one warm. Fourth, you fill every container you have with cold water. Bathtubs, pots, bottles, any container. Municipal water systems fail in cascade within 12 to 24 hours of grid loss because the pressure pumps lose power. The water in your pipes right now is the cleanest water you will have for the next 3 days. Capture it before pressure drops. That is the triage window. 3 numbers in a notebook. Freezer closed, layers on. Water captured. That is hour 0 to 12. Hour 12 to 36. The sustain window. This is where the household either adapts or breaks. The food in the fridge is no longer safe. The temperature inside the house has shifted noticeably. Phone batteries are at 50%. The information environment is degrading because the cell towers are running on backup power and starting to fail one by one. The priorities in this window are 3. Power for critical loads, light for navigation and morale, and information. For power, if you do not have a battery system, you have your car. A vehicle from 1990 on, with a working alternator, is a generator on wheels. The alternator at idle outputs roughly 1200 to 1500 watts. With a 500 watt pure sine wave inverter wired to the battery, you can run a medical fridge, charge phones, and run a small LED strip indefinitely as long as you have gasoline. The vehicle must be outside or in a fully ventilated garage because of carbon monoxide. Idle the vehicle for 45 minutes every 4 hours, not continuously. Continuous idle costs more fuel than you need to spend. For light, headlamps before lanterns, lanterns before flashlights. Flashlights last. A headlamp leaves both hands free and uses less battery for the same effective illumination, because the light moves with your eyes. 1 headlamp per person, batteries fresh, is non-negotiable. Candles are for ambient comfort only, never for navigation. More house fires occur in the first 72 hours of a blackout from candles than from any other cause. For information, AM radio, specifically AM, not FM, AM signals travel farther on lower power and survive longer when broadcast stations are running on backup. A $9 AM FM radio with 2 AA batteries gives you situational awareness for 2 weeks. Cell phones go dark when the towers run out of fuel. Radio does not. That is the sustain window. Car as generator. Headlamp first, AM radio. Hour 12 to 36. Hour 36 to 72. The extend window. By this point, your fridge is empty, the freezer is at the edge of safe temperature, the house is stabilized at whatever the ambient permits, and either help is coming or the situation extends beyond 72. This window is about 3 things: food rotation, sanitation, and the decision to stay or to leave. For food, the principle is cold first, dry last. Whatever is left in the freezer eats now or moves to a cooler with ice from outside if temperatures permit. Canned and dry goods come out only after the perishable window closes. A common mistake in this window is to open the canned chili at hour 20 when the chicken in the freezer is still safe. The chicken does not survive another day. The chili survives 3 years. Eat the one that will not. For sanitation. Municipal sewer systems use lift station pumps. Pumps need power. After 36 to 48 hours of grid loss in some regions, sewer backup becomes a real risk. The simplest mitigation is a 5-gallon bucket, a heavy-duty trash bag, and sawdust or kitty litter to layer between uses. This is unpleasant to talk about, and it is the difference between a survivable 72 hours and a household biohazard event. Plan for it before you need it. For the stay or leave decision. The rule is simple. If your house is structurally intact, the temperature is survivable. With passive measures, you have water and basic food, and there is no fire, no flood, and no active threat. You stay. The roads in a regional event are more dangerous than your living room. Most blackout-related deaths in the United States in the last 20 years have happened on the road during evacuation or from carbon monoxide indoors, not from cold in homes during shelter-in-place. That is the extend window. Cold first, dry last. Sanitation plan in place. Stay unless physics says leave. Hour 36 to 72. One observation that holds across every blackout I have studied. The households that come out of the 72-hour window in good shape have one thing in common. They wrote down what was working and what was not, every 6 hours. 3 lines in a notebook every 6 hours. Inside temperature, outside temperature, state of charge. That is the same baseline you started with at hour 0, repeated. The notebook is what turns chaos into a system, and a system is what turns 3 days of no power into a tolerable inconvenience. Now I want to come back to the chemistry, because the title of this video is No Generator, and I want to make good on that promise. A small nickel-iron battery bank, the chemistry Edison patented in 1901, can be built for under $2,000 in cells alone and will hold critical load through any 72-hour event in any temperature your house can tolerate. The cells are documented to survive over a century of cycling. They do not catch fire. They do not degrade in freezing temperatures the way lithium does. They are not the right choice for an electric car. They are exactly the right choice for the freezer, with your insulin and the LED lights and the radio. Lithium iron phosphate is the modern compromise. Lighter, cheaper per kilowatt hour, but with a hard temperature window. Below freezing, lithium iron phosphate stops accepting charge. In a Texas freeze, that is the failure mode. The battery is intact. It simply will not take the charge from your solar panel. The nickel iron cell next to it accepts charge at -20 Celsius without complaint. That is the difference between a wall of useless plastic and a working bank when it actually matters. The thermal logic matters as much as the chemistry. A typical American home at 68 Fahrenheit with the heat off drops about 1 degree per hour when the outdoor temperature is 30 Fahrenheit. The math says you have roughly 8 to 10 hours before clothing alone is not enough. After that point, you concentrate the household into one interior room with no exterior walls, and you heat one room with body heat and one small safe heat source. You do not try to heat the house, you heat the room. That single decision is worth more than half a tank of generator fuel. There's a number worth memorizing here. The critical load for a typical household during a 72-hour event is between 200 and 400 watts continuous. That number assumes one medical fridge, one freezer cycling intermittently, 3 LED lights, a radio, and rotating phone charging. 400 watts continuous over 72 hours is about 29 kilowatt hours total. A nickel-iron bank sized for that load is roughly 6 cells of 200 amp hours at 1.2 volts each, wired for 24 or 48 volt output, depending on your inverter. The full schematic, with safety disconnects and the temperature derating curves, is in the documentation. The other variable people miss is heat loss through windows. Single pane glass loses heat at roughly 7 times the rate of an insulated wall. In a 72-hour event, you cover the windows with whatever you have. Blankets, cardboard bubble wrap, even newspaper taped to the glass. It looks improvised, because it is. It also slows your interior temperature decline by roughly 25 to 30% in a typical envelope. That is the equivalent of running a small space heater for free. I pinned a comment under this video with the 3 items I could not fit in the script. The car wiring diagram for the alternator to inverter setup, the freezer thermal table that shows how long different foods last by initial temperature, and the AM emergency broadcast frequency list by region. Pinned comment, top of the comment section. One last point before I close this out. The household that handles a 72-hour blackout is not the one with the most gear. It is the one with the right hierarchy. 3 numbers in a notebook. Freezer closed, layers on, water captured. Car as generator if needed. Headlamp before candle. AM radio, cold first, dry last. One room heated, not the house. That hierarchy is more valuable than any single piece of equipment, including the generator you do not have. A generator is a tool that buys you a few hours of normal. The protocol I just walked through buys you 3 days of survivable. Those are different problems, and most people do not figure out which one they are solving until the lights have already been out for half a day. If this protocol is useful to you, the channel runs on subscribers. Hit subscribe. The next video walks through the same exercise for water contamination events, which is the second most common multi-day failure mode after grid loss. That is the survival research. Weekly, documented, technical, no fluff. When the grid fails, knowledge does not.